Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this next in a series of Moving Communities webinars. Just got a few more people in the waiting room whom I'm going to admit, and we'll be starting in a minute or two. I have set the computer or the settings to mute everyone when they come in, so you will find that you're automatically muted. If you can keep yourself muted, unless you really want to say something, that would be great. I'll do housekeeping in a second, just letting one or two more people join. Excellent. Okay, I think that is almost everyone. Almost everyone. Good to see a few familiar names coming in. Okay, right. I think that is everyone through in the meeting room. Right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Moving Communities Community Survey webinar. My name is Michael. I'm a director of Active Insight, formerly known as LeisureNet, and we're the lead within the Moving Communities Consortium on all things experiential. So principally the two surveys, the Customer Experience Survey, which many of you are currently doing or going to be doing after the summer holidays. But the second element that we lead on is the community survey. And this webinar over the next 45 minutes is going to give you a great introduction to the community survey webinar, explain everything you need to know about it and share some really interesting insights. Just a couple of points of housekeeping, just to let you know, we are recording this because a lot of people wanted to attend but weren't able. So hopefully everyone's happy that we are recording. If I can ask you to keep mute at all times. If you've got any comments or questions, then by all means put them into the chat, and Sally Cheeseman from 4Global will be keeping an eye on that chat function and will give me or Simon or Emma, the three speakers, a shout if any questions come in that need answering. So without any further ado, let's crack on. So confirm the agenda. This is me, Mike Hill, giving you the welcome and talking you through the agenda. I'm then going to pass over to Emma Bernstein from Sport England to give you some of the context and around the moving communities in general and the community survey and why it's so important. And then back to me to give you an overview of the survey, talk about some of the key numbers and findings to date. I'm then going to pass over to my esteemed colleague Simon Shibley from Sheffield Hallam, who's going to give you some examples of deeper dives and how we are looking at linking the different data sets which are now coming in through moving communities. And then just to finish off with a very brief explanation of if you're interested in taking part in using the Moving Communities Community Survey, how do you do that? And then we've left 10 minutes at the end if we need it, just to answer any questions or comments you may have. Great, but let's crack on. So Emma, can I hand over to you?
Yeah, thanks, Mike, and good afternoon, everybody. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Emma Bernstein. I'm a strategic projects lead at Sport England, and I sit within the Place Directorate and have been leading on the Moving Communities work since COVID, so quite some time now. I think really what I wanted just to kick off today with was a bit of context as to what Moving Communities is, where it's come from, and where it's heading next. And to do that, thanks Mike for flicking the slides on, just a bit of background on the leisure centre side of it, very much a focus around being able to articulate really clearly the value of leisure centres in local communities. We've grown the sample size over time from, we started at about 600 sites. I think we're now over 1,300 sites, submitting key data around 6 different performance indicators, which are on the screen there, and a commitment from Sport England to maintain that service free of charge for all local authorities and their leisure operators where they have them, to get a real feel both at a national level what all of those sites added up together deliver, but equally to articulate that for local partners, so that they can benchmark and compare and understand performance in a way that potentially they might not be able to do only looking at their own portfolio, and bring to life some of the nuances, some of the opportunities and some of the challenges to improve the service for our local communities. We've seen really good examples of how that's driven decision making and investment, that ranges from locally into those facilities themselves, or outreach work that happens from them, and also working with government nationally, and particularly the business case that went to the Treasury, and how that data with the swimming pool participation, the risk of closure around energy costs going through the roof, being able to articulate that at scale using this platform has helped to support some investment into the centre, into the swimming pool market. Thanks, Mike. So just to give you a little bit more of a flavour, and I won't go through line by line, but really there on the left-hand side are those 6 buckets of data. Energy data is missing off that one, and that's a key focus for the environmental side of the Swimming Pool Support Fund, and being able to articulate the impact that funding's had. But most importantly, I think, is the standardisation. We're able to look across those large number of sites and start to compare apples with apples rather than apples and pears and bananas and everything else that we had at the beginning. So giving that opportunity to get some consistency that allows data to be aggregated and filtered across a number of really important benchmarks, and I'd pick out the social value one at the bottom, really widening our understanding of the wider impact of these facilities and using the dashboards to be able to do that. But importantly, behind secure access to ensure that confidentiality is maintained in that data. And we've got then the different user groups. And I'll probably just highlight Sport England and sector bodies and local and national government. I think strategically, over the past 4 years, we've seen the importance of this tool grow from not just a Sport England and local authority and operator tool, but now, as I say, with that influence in the Treasury, with that influence across local government and particularly the DCMS, they have logins to the platform and can see those amalgamated pictures, not individual sites, but amalgamated pictures of impact. And I think, you know, to probably just tee this up in terms of importance, it's growing ever more, and we're about to invest in another 4 years of moving communities and support that rollout and maintain that free of charge service, to continue to drive this really valuable data set. Mike's touched on the 2 surveys, and one of them is the topic for today, and I know Mike's going to go into a lot more detail and bring to life some of the insights that we've got so far. But just to put that into the context of Sport England's place investment, understanding local places, not just users of leisure centres, but the wider place, and the role that not just leisure centres, but other places and spaces where people can be active is really important. And it's a massive opportunity within the community survey. And I know, Mike, I'll pass back to you to bring to life some of the findings that we've got to date.
Brilliant, thanks, Emma. You better grab that glass of water. You sound like you're suffering a little bit today. So thank you very much for that. So, okay, so that brings us to the community survey. And as Emma said, I think to stress here that this is us as a Moving Communities organisation, moving clearly out of the 4 walls of traditional leisure and sports centres into the community. And this is something that with my Active Insight LeisureNet hat on, we've been doing for probably 20, 25 years. We used to call them non-user surveys. We now very clearly call them community surveys, because this is a tool, an instrument to go out into the whole community and ask in a standardized way some really important questions that we need to understand the answers to if we're going to try and increase, you know, this base of people that are active on a regular basis. So if I had to sum up what the Moving Communities Community Survey is, it's a standardized online survey. It's been created for local authorities and leisure centre operators to use. And it's designed to help engagement with residents, all residents, adult residents, I should say, regarding their attitudes and perceptions around physical activity in general and active leisure in their local community. And as Emma said, this is a survey which has been designed, you know, by the Moving Communities team in conjunction with Sport England's Insight team, and it's available to download and use totally free of charge. if you're part of that, of the Moving Communities service, you can do that through the platform, and you get some basic hand-holding from my team if you choose to do that service. And then we do, though, in addition, have a premium service, and the data I'm going to be sharing with you today has come through that premium service, which is available and giving you national benchmarks and weighted results, which we'll talk about a little bit more detail later. So 4 key benefits of the survey that we think there was, and the 13 local authorities that have gone through it so far hopefully all agree, and then many of them have come back with very positive outcomes and actions that have happened as a result of doing the survey. So first of all, it provides insight into what local residents think about physical activity, active leisure, active travel, sporting activities, and views on opportunities available in the area. It will definitely help you understand existing barriers to residents being more physically active and provide insight on what you can do to encourage them to be more active. And then the next 2 are quite interesting, and they're definitely slightly nuanced. So thirdly, it can provide insight into the characteristics between those who choose to use public sport and leisure facilities and those who don't. And that all of it, we're looking at age, gender, etc., etc. And then finally, it helps identify perceptions of public sport for sport and leisure facilities, and including open spaces, outdoor spaces, among both the non-users and the users. So when we go out typically, into a community, we expect the majority of people to be not using leisure centres, certainly, and to a lesser extent outdoor spaces on a regular basis. This survey goes out and samples the whole community. And what questions do we ask? Well, 5 key areas in terms of the questions. So the first one is some fairly standardized ones around current levels of physical activity. So these are questions which you've probably been familiar with from active people and other Sport England surveys. They're very much standardized and used by everyone in terms of how often they're doing 30 minutes of moderate intense activity throughout the week, for example. Secondly, physical activity aspirations. So do they want to be more active? Would be an example of that. We then, in the third section, move on to indoor physical activity generally, and more specifically, the public sector local leisure centre provision. And there's 5 or 6 questions about that. We then move outdoors. So we then look at outdoor physical activity, and that's all sorts of open spaces. And then finally, there's 2 smaller sections looking at active travel and children and family fitness. And the reason that we came up with these 5 areas is that a couple of years ago, we ran a pilot with 6 local authorities. We really tested and challenged our assumptions about what questions should be in, what was going to be most valuable. And following that pilot, these are the 5 areas that we ended up with. Okay, so some key numbers and findings from the last couple of years. So we've now reached the stage where we have a total of 5,000, just over 5,000 responses across 12 local authorities that we've done this survey with. And those local authorities go right down south up to north, great cross-section geographically and also demographically between whether they're predominantly urban, rural, etc., etc. So that's the sample size that we're looking at. Here's some idea of what that sample looks like. So active for at least 30 minutes on 5+ days a week. Our sample is sitting at 36% for that, and active travel, and we're only looking at 1 day a weekly, is 79. So one of the things that that we recognise is that the people that are completing this survey at the moment, there is definitely an overrepresentation and a bias towards those people that are already using leisure, sports, physical activity facilities and are reasonably active. So that is a caveat. It's something that we're aware of, and it's something that we're going to be working to improve going forward with partners that choose to do the survey. And we've got some really good ideas and examples of what works in terms of ensuring that the sample that you reach through the survey is really truly representative of the local community. In terms of a big question, would like to be more active. Nationally, we're at 66, 2/3 of samples saying yes, they'd like to be more active. This is a question which interestingly varies significantly from local authority to local authority. So, for example, I was up with Active Wirral yesterday, presenting their results to a really great collaborative grouping that they put together, and they were sitting at 49.50. So this is a question where we do see a lot of difference between local authorities and different communities. So the next natural question is, what type of activities would you like to do more of? And it's interesting. I think it's really interesting that even though there is now definitely more awareness of the benefits of just going outside and walking, cycling and running, using green and open spaces, when we ask this question, we still get indoor leisure as being number one, quite significantly number one at 75%. And this is everything from swimming, gym, group exercise classes, etc. Outdoor leisure, number two at 62%. Interesting active travel is in there at 48%. Sport, informal, non-competitive, 24%. This is another key point. Look at organised sport and structured competitive activity. It's only down there at 14%. And I think we've obviously known and recognised this for a long time, that competitive sport is great, but it's only ever going to reach a small percentage of the population. One of the things Simon's going to do a little bit later on in his deeper dives is look at the difference between what active people, or how active people answer this question, and how inactive people answer this question. And that's something that we're doing increasingly now, is now we've got a great national sample of over 5,000, we can start splitting it up, slicing and dicing it between not just age and gender, but those people that are already active and those people that are inactive. Okay, so what sessions would people like? What would encourage them to be more active? And there's a bit of a theme coming through that increasingly people are looking for specific provision to meet their needs and requirements and to make them feel comfortable. So we've established that most people would like to do more activity indoors in some sort of structured way. How do they want to do this? Well, there's a recognition that they're not just going to come in and do it by themselves. So 56% say sessions for beginners, 38% sessions for older people, and 35% sessions for women and girls. So specific sessions tailored to people's needs is definitely a theme that comes through this. In terms of leisure centre usage, this is a figure which is higher than I'd like it to see. I'd like to see it at 71%. I would expect this really to be around 30 to 40%. The definition of this usage, though, is only visiting once in the last 12 months. And that's one of the reasons why it is so high. Obviously, there's a big difference between coming in once in 12 months and coming regularly in 2 or 3 times a week. One of the more controversial questions that we've got in this survey is a rating of your local leisure centre provision. And it's a 5-point scale, with the 2 positives being good and very good. And the other thing that's really important to understand on this is that this is not being asked to just users of the local leisure centre provision. So this is what the whole community thinks, whether they use it or not. And one of the interesting things that I often see is that people that don't use local leisure centres on a regular basis sometimes rate them higher than those people that do. I'm not sure that's a positive thing, but people sometimes have a perception, and they'd like to feel that their local leisure centre, their swimming pool, is there if they want to use it, and it looks good from the outside, and yes, the provision is good, and they'll score it highly. So at the moment, that's sitting at 45% at good or very good. And the other thing, and I'd stress, is that there is a big difference. So if we look at the 13 local authority sample, that score is varying by 10-15%. So there's a lot of difference in how local communities are perceiving their local leisure centre provision. Why haven't people used leisure centre in the last 12 months? And again, this is, you've got to recognise that this is the whole community answering this, inactive and inactive. So the main reason why people haven't used local leisure centres is that they feel that they are doing enough activity-wise outside of the leisure centre. The second reason is too expensive, and several of the questions again, as usual, we see this. I've seen this over the last decades of doing this sort of research. It's really interesting to try and tease out, how important cost, price, feeling of value for money is in terms of being a barrier. But when, as I say, 33% saying it's too expensive. Third, down at 19%, non-availability of activities at convenient time, lots of little things in other, and then that old chestnut, not enough time. And we always find it's not enough time work-related more than home-related that comes out here. And when choosing which local leisure centre to use, or choosing to use a local leisure centre, again, price and affordability at the moment, and bear in mind that these surveys have been done over these last couple of years with cost of living crisis, etc. Price affordability is high up there at 69%. Again, activities on offer. That mix is really important, 65%. Really interesting to see parking so high up there, convenient parking at 43%, as important as membership offers and then location. And I've again over the years I've been doing this research, I can't stress enough that one of the big advantages that public sector leisure physical activity provision has is it tends to be really embedded into local communities. People are A, aware of it, and B, they can access it reasonably easy and integrate it into their normal everyday life, and that's involving going to shops, to schools, home and work. We need to make sure that physical activity offering is easily accessible. So location and programming and marketing of easy opportunities to get active is absolutely vital. And then encouragement factors. So top 3 offers most likely to encourage the usage of leisure centres. Again, discounted prices, and this was not an open question. We gave people a long list of things they could choose here. So discounted prices on the basis of local residents, corporate, etc., etc. Secondly, no obligation free taster sessions, and thirdly, exclusive sessions for a specific group. So what this is suggesting to me, and interesting to hear what you say or what you think about this later, Simon, is that it seems that if we want to get a whole new tranche of people into leisure centres, we're not going to do it just by building the centres and opening the facilities. We need to program, we need to target, we need to lay on specific sessions which are going to make people feel comfortable coming in to use these centres. Okay, moving on to the outdoors. So what would encourage people to use the outdoors? More to exercise, reducing crime and antisocial behaviour, 45%, improved lighting, which obviously related to that, 39%, more information. Lack of information about activities available outdoors is much higher percentage-wise than information about activities indoors. So we're relatively better at telling people what they can do in leisure and sports centres compared to what they can do outdoors. Fourthly, improving access and footpaths, and fifthly, maintenance of recreational spaces. And then last slide or two before I hand over to you, Simon. What would encourage active travel more? Walkers, cyclists separated from traffic, number 1, not surprising at 42%. Improved safety features, feeling safer, very similar to number 1. None and above. There's a third of people that just don't want to do it, but that does leave 2/3 that do. We're prioritising walkers and cyclists at junctions and more direct routes. Okay, Simon, can I hand over to you for some deeper dives?
Thank you, Mike, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm Simon Shibley from Sheffield Hallam University. I've got 5 minutes, so I'm just going to make some quick points to illustrate how you can extract added value from the data. And I think the key point is that in these modern times, data and how you use it is a potential source of competitive advantage. So first up then, what Mike has done is to present the results almost on a question by question basis. So this is what people like to do indoors, this is what people like to do outdoors. What I like to do to add some more value to that data is to start cross-tabulating the questions by looking at one thing against another. So on the survey, we have a question about people's health perception. What's your general health like these days, from excellent to very poor? And then comparing that with a similar question about whether or not people have either a disability or a long-term limiting condition and physical activity. And what you find is, for the most part, those people who report having excellent or very good health are the people who tend to be the most active. The hard yards for us in this industry is enabling those people who are less active to become active. And that tells us where we need to focus our effort. What do we do to help the people whose health is not brilliant to get doing something which is fun, fulfilling, enjoyable, whatever? And having that data enables that. The last question on the survey is people's postcodes. And we don't collect that because we're nosy, or we want to pry, or we want to collect personal information. It's about converting that data into index of multiple deprivation profiles. And for the most part, we deal with index of multiple deprivation as a single score. But actually, it's built up of 7 different things. And during lockdown, I did a project for UK Sport and Sport England, looking at tackling racism and racial inequality in sport. And what I found was that different communities have different deprivations. So, for example, people from Pakistani and Bangladeshi backgrounds were more likely to experience education, income, and employment deprivation, whereas people from Black communities were more likely to experience housing and health deprivation. And that has implications for physical activity. We also collect data on protected characteristics, which enables us to look at equality, diversity, and inclusion monitoring. Who is using our services, but more crucially, who isn't? And who are the people who have latent demand for sport and physical activity, who at the moment are not necessarily accessing it? Now, the fourth point should read, benchmarking your data internally and externally. And just pick up on what Emma said in her introduction. By having this data, it's the opportunity, if you repeat the survey, to compare how you did against yourself last time. And it's also the opportunity to compare how you do as an authority with how another authority might perform. Which leads on to my final point on this slide, which is about learning from your peers, that having this information enables you to have conversations with people who are either other operators or in other authorities, so that you can learn from each other and pool information. Next slide, please, Mike. And just give it a click to bring on the animation. There we go. So Mike showed you earlier the headline figures for what people would like to do more of. And when we break it down by those who are sufficiently active and those who are less active, there isn't actually that much variation. So we're doing the right things in offering indoor leisure, outdoor leisure, and the opportunity to engage in active travel. But what's probably more interesting, and again, this links to a point that Mike was making, it's not about just providing the facility, it's what you do with it. So Mike, if you could go on to the next slide, please. Again, what would encourage you to make or to use leisure centres. The one I've highlighted here is no obligation free taster sessions, and that's more popular amongst the active than the less active. So 2 more clicks, Mike. But where the less active have a significantly higher score is on exclusive sessions for specific groups. And I think this is about doing physical activity with people who share a common interest, rather than the risk of finding yourself in a group whereby there might be experts, there might be beginners, and there's no meaningful participation. 2 more clicks, Mike. And finally, the issue of pricing, that those people who are inactive are more likely to value discounted prices for their deprivation or disadvantage than blanket discounted prices simply because you're a local resident, and so on. And I think what this helps us to do is to form an opinion about how we take the risk out of getting new customers into our leisure centres, which is not as crude as offering free, but maybe a reduced level of risk, so that you have a psychological contract that they're paying something, they want to come in, they find it positive, and ultimately they become hooked and are prepared to pay the full price. And at that point, I will leave it there. Thank you.
Lovely, thanks, Simon. I think this is one of the most interesting crosstabs for me when we start splitting up the active to the less active, because with limited time and resources, who do we want to target? Do we want to target those people that are active to come into our centres, or those people that are already in our centres to do more, or do we need to get the less active doing just something indoors or outdoors? And when we do this sort of crosstab and this sort of analysis, you can start to build up a picture. And of course, when the numbers get bigger, we can then drill down even more and say, let's look at less active or inactive young women, and let's see specifically what things we need to do from a marketing program and pricing point of view to get that particular group into the centres more often. Okay, so that's the findings I wanted to share. It is still early days. You know, there's hundreds of local authorities out there that are part of moving communities. And we've only done 13 so far, plus the 6 that we did a couple of years ago in the pilot. So that sample, that national sample of just over 5,000 is hopefully going to double or triple in the next 12 months alone. And it will allow us to do a lot more drilling down of the type that Simon shared there. So obviously the big question is, how do we take part in the survey? Before I do that, I was just going to ask if we've got any questions. I know we didn't have 5 minutes ago. Have we got anything there at all, Sally?
Sorry, I'm struggling to find the unmute button.
That's okay.
Question, will there be a chance to cross-tabulate in the future with community survey, similar to chi-squared test, to examine differences between categorical variables? I suggest probably one for Simon, that.
Why do you say that, Sally? Simon, you better take that one, because I didn't understand it.
I think it's a brilliant question, and thanks to whoever posed it. In principle, for each local authority, it's your data, and we can provide you with the actual data set, and then you can do whatever analysis you like with it. We certainly, with the premium offer, would be more than happy to do bespoke analysis for you if there were particular things that you wanted to ask or have cross-tabulated. We would do that. And I think it's a really good question about the significance of it, in the sense that, yes, you do get variations in responses, but we don't necessarily know whether that difference between, say, the active and inactive is statistically significant. And by doing the chi-squared test, we can demonstrate whether it's a real difference or whether it's just a statistical anomaly. So, great question. Thank you.
Actually, Sally, I can see the questions here, and there's one or two that I can answer, and one or two for another one for Simon. So we talked about the cross tabulation. The results of the current survey for the year have they been added to the MC data dashboard? Well, the answer to that is no, because obviously what we've only got 13 local authorities that have done that. The way the survey reports is that you get, if you do the freemium version, then you get your results appearing in the dashboard next to your other data for the local authority. If you do the premium, I'll talk a little bit more about that later, then you get a bespoke PDF report put together by Active Insight and Simon and Sharping from Sheffield Hallam. So that's the current stage of it being added to the dashboard. One for you, probably, Simon, and well, no, I can answer this, and then I'll leave the next one to you. Is there any demographic capture of information to link to the results? Well, as Simon mentioned, we pick up postcodes, we pick up age, gender, ethnicity, and whether they have a long-term health condition. So I think we've got most of the protected characteristics, I believe they're called. Is that correct, Simon? Have I missed anything there?
No, that's absolutely spot on, Mike.
Okay, and then definitely one for you, unless you just answered it and I didn't understand your answer. Chi-square test. Can we possibly do it on the platform in the future?
That would be a great addition to the platform, but I think realistically that is a very nice to have rather than a likely priority. For things like the chi-square test, we would normally be processing the data in a package called SPSS, the statistical package for the social sciences, which has all of those sorts of statistical tests built into them. And I can't see in the short term how we could build that into the platform. But again, we are happy to work with people that if you have a particular query or you want your data analyzing in a certain way, just out of goodwill and interest, we would facilitate that for you. I want 300 local authorities coming to me saying, can you do this, that, and the other? But generally, it's a small cohort of people who want to do this. They're interested in it for the right reasons, and we will do our best to help you.
Thanks, Simon. I'm glad you're on the call to answer that one. Okay, so let's just wrap things up with a bit of an explanation. Different ways to use the survey or for you to engage and use the survey. You've heard me talk about freemium and premium. Let me explain that in detail. So the freemium service, so all local authority and operators in England can access the Moving Communities platform free of charge. Once you're signed up for that, then you can get a copy of the online survey. You can do it yourself by promoting it through to your local community, and your headline basic results will be available and presented on the platform next to your other Moving Communities data. And my team in Active Insight, specifically Sarah Forster, who's on this call, will give you some basic hand-holding assistance. And we've got quite a nice implementation assistance document, which we send out as well. So that's the freemium service. You can do all of that totally free of charge. The premium service, which is the one that we've used for the 13 local authorities that this data is based. So for this additional fee, the fee depends on the size of the local authority. You can then get the enhanced service. And the enhanced service includes the weighting of the survey results. This is something that Simon and Sharping have developed. So it's used as a model based on 2021 census data. And we look at the moment, just age and gender. And we apply weightings for our algorithms to help address any bias in results due to certain demographics being over or underrepresented. And really interesting, what we discover in every time this survey has been done so far is that we end up with more women doing it and more people from older age groups doing it. So the weighting that we need to undertake is always applying weighting to responses from males and responses from younger age groups. And this is, it allows us to do an online survey, which these days is really the only cost-effective way of doing this sort of community survey. But then to try and address the main problem with an online survey, and that it's self-selective or self-selecting. And as I say, we always end up with too many women doing it, too many older people. So the weighting is a great way of helping us deliver a cost-effective solution. You also then get the ability to benchmark your results against the weighted national benchmarks. So as Simon said, a lot of these questions don't have that much value in isolation, but as soon as you put them, benchmark them against national benchmarks, you can suddenly see whether you are around average, around the norm, or whether you are higher or lower, better or worse, depending on the question. And as we get more local authorities, we'll be able to do what we did with the old NBS, National Benchmarking Service, and start looking at family groupings. So it's not, you're not just comparing your results against national benchmarks, but we can start grouping local authorities that are similar from a demographic point of view, and they can compare themselves against similar type local authorities. You also get the benefit of up to 3 local questions. We've had some really varied and brilliant local questions that have been asked by local authorities, sometimes related to specific initiatives, physical activity promotion schemes that they've implemented or things that they're thinking of doing locally. So you've got the ability to do that. And probably most importantly, you get the enhanced support and guidance from myself, Simon and Sarah Forster, to help you implement the survey successfully and understand the results. And the report that you get is a very, very detailed report indeed. Happy to send out some examples of that. The survey process, it can be done as quickly as in 4 months. So we always have an initial meeting, go through the process and questionnaire. We develop the survey links and help you prepare a comms strategy. We always recommend that you get the councils, Marcoms people involved really early on, because they're the key to going out and advertising this, not through your usual channels related to sports, leisure centres, physical activity, but through those ones which are nothing to do with physical activity. So the best surveys, the best representative samples have come through channels such as social services, housing, benefits, the General Council website. One council put a link to the survey at the bottom of every email signature that went out from council officers. Others have gone to engagement events, and sometimes in Wirral, they actually had an outreach team who went out, knocked on doors in particularly target and relatively deprived areas, and got a really good cross-section representation from them. Month 3, survey can go live. We recommend it goes for 3 or 4 weeks, and then within a month you get your completed report. As I say, the key success is this communication strategy. There needs to be particular focus on younger men and the inactive, of course. We've got some great examples of great practice. We've got really good examples of local questions, and as I say, with the premium, all results are weighted and then compared to national benchmarks. Okay, you've got Sarah Forster's email address there. Sarah, can I ask you just in the chat just to put your email address as well? Because then it's really easy for people just to click on that and drop you a line if they'd like any more information. And before we wrap it up, I can do this actually, so I'll just check and see if we've got any more questions coming in. So one from Kerry Venus. So within the people grouped as active, do we ask any questions around whether they also work within sport and physical activity? So the answer to that, Kerry, is no. We don't ask anything about their occupation. That's correct, isn't it, Simon? We wouldn't know that.
Yeah, we do ask questions about occupation, but I think Kerry raises a really interesting point, which is if that was important to you, you could include that as one of your 3 local questions if you bought the premium service.
Okay, thanks, Simon. Jodie asks, which link would we send them to our council? We hold 3 leisure centres with different links. May need to, I'm not sure I understand that, Jodie. So let me explain how it works, and then pop down in the chat again if it doesn't answer. So this survey is not done on a leisure centre by leisure centre basis. It's done on a local authority, a council type basis. So we will create one link, which is your community survey link for the whole local authority. You may be thinking of the customer experience survey, which is the user survey that we also run through Moving Communities, currently going on at the moment. And that one, you get individual links for each leisure centre, because from a user point of view, you want to know their attitudes and perceptions, their user experience of that particular leisure centre. But this is just a council-wide survey. However, having said that, what we do ask, one of the questions within the survey is, do you use any of these public sector leisure provision? If so, which one? So we do know which centre, if they use any of your local public sector, local authority leisure centres, and if so, which one? Hopefully that's answered it. That's okay, Jodie. It gets very confusing because we've got the customer experience, Moving Communities customer experience, Moving Communities community survey. Okay, if any other questions? Doesn't look like we have. So just to reiterate, if you want any more information, if you want, we'll send it. This is being recorded, as I mentioned at the beginning. Sarah will send out a link to this recording to everyone that's attended. So if you've got colleagues that you'd like to listen to it, they can do that. And as it's any other further questions, please drop Sarah Forster a line. I'd just like to thank Emma and Simon, my colleagues, for helping me on this presentation. I hope it's been really useful. This is a really good start over the first year. But as I say, in another year or two, we'll be going up to 10, 20,000, many more local authorities, and we'll be able to delve a lot deeper. Okay, thanks everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day.